오늘은 우리나라 레바논을 여러분께 소개하고 레바논 사람의 관점으로 현재 상황에 이르게 된 배경을 설명해 보려고 합니다. 먼저 제 소개를 한국말로 하고 나머지 부분은 영어로 할게요. 물론 한국어 자막도 넣을 거예요. 괜찮죠? 저는 키말리이고 캐나다 사람입니다. 정확히는 캐나다 케벡주에서 태어났고 자랐는데 부모님 두 분 다 레바논 사람입니다. 제가 태어나기 전에 캐나다에 이민하셨어요. 사실은 레바논에서 전쟁이 한창이던 시기를 비해서 캐나다에 오신 건데 이따가 영상에서 자세히 말씀드리겠습니다. 저는 2013년 시작으로 한국에서 시간을 많이 보냈는데 약 1년 전쯤 캐나다 외교부의 정부 일을 그만두고 유튜브를 하려고 제 아내의 고향인 천안 살기로 결심했습니다. 원래 세계사를 전공했고 캐나다에서 한국사 석사 학위를 받았습니다. 이 평범한 얼굴을 유튜브 피드에서 보고 싶다면 구독해주세요. 자, 그럼 이제 레바논에 대해 알아볼까요? So what is Lebanon? Lebanon is a tiny country in the Middle East, actually 10 times smaller than South Korea. And it is close to famous cities such as Nazareth, Jerusalem. It is actually situated between Turkey, Syria, and Israel and Palestine. Although in the Middle East, there are no deserts in Lebanon, there are a lot of fruits, a lot of vegetables, olives, bananas that grow there. It enjoys a great Mediterranean temperature, just like in Italy, for example, and beaches run all over the west coast of the country, with mountains on the east. 정말 풍수가 좋은 나라입니다. It is a country that has a great 풍수, or feng shui, with around 40 major streams or rivers that run all over the country. In the past, the area of Lebanon was known for its story of Aphrodite and Adonis, for its premium quality cedar tree that is still the symbol of Lebanon if you look at the flag, and also for being the home of the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians were an ancient seafaring civilization that spread across the Mediterranean, introducing the first complete alphabet in the world to Europe, giving birth to Greek and Roman alphabets. So what is the modern situation of Lebanon? Well, being at the center of 3 continents, Lebanon was invaded numerous times and conquered, more recently by the Ottoman Turks and by the French. This melting pot resulted in an Arabic-speaking country with 18 different official religions that are intrinsically linked with local politics, giving birth to a lot of political religious leaders. It has been decades that the country has not had an official census, but very roughly speaking, half of the population is Christian and the other half is Muslim, which is once again pretty particular for a Middle Eastern Arabic-speaking country. So eventually Lebanon got its independence around the same time that Korea was liberated from Japan, in this case in November 1943. And until 1975, Lebanon was known as the Switzerland of the Middle East because of its prosperity, secure banking, and its snow-white mountains.
The financial comparison of the Lebanon to Switzerland and its role as the trading house of the Middle East is a fair one. Free enterprise flourishes. Modern roads cover the country. Luxury buildings and hotels have sprung up. One of the main objects of both is tourism. In this small land bordered by Israel and Syria, the East and West fuse smoothly. Ancient and modern, Christian and Muslim. It's a land of contrasts. Sunny lowlands, snowy mountains.
So how did we eventually get into this war with Israel? So this is not the first time that Israel invades and bombards Lebanon, and it is often related to the issue of Palestine and Israel, which we will not get into in this video. But to make a very long story as short as possible, in 1975, a civil war started in Lebanon, and it degenerated rapidly. The details of this war are extremely complex. You can think of the Chunshu Shide, the spring and autumn period in China, where hundreds of groups and polities were waging war against each other, sometimes allying and sometimes attacking each other. That was the situation during the civil war in Lebanon. Not only did each religious sect have its own military group, but even within the same religion there would be multiple factions battling against each other and fighting against other religious groups, other political ideologists such as communists and pan-Arabists, and also other ethnic groups. Each one of these groups only had a few thousand men, sometimes a few hundreds only. Foreign interference was at its peak during that period, and eventually foreign countries joined the feud. Syria, USA, France, Saudi Arabia, even an organization called the Japanese Red Army, and of course Israel. All of these countries were eventually involved in the Lebanese civil war. although many tensions eventually led to the war, the main reason was the massive arrival of Palestinian refugees to Lebanon, and especially the Palestinian armed groups, the strongest of which was the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, which fled from Israel and Jordan after the creation of Israel on Palestinian land. With almost 500,000 Palestinians and tens of thousands of fighters, the Palestinian refugees came to constitute almost 12% of the total Lebanese population and effectively ruled the south of Lebanon all the way up until Beirut, the capital. From there, they continued to attack Israel that had just taken their land. Similarly to the Korean provisional government of Kim Gu in China, they remained focused on the mission of liberating Palestine from Israeli occupation. So it is in that context that Israel invaded the south of Lebanon and sieged Beirut to drive out the PLO, which it succeeded in doing. However, what followed was an inhumane occupation of South Lebanon by the Israeli army for 18 years, labeled as a security zone, and until the year 2000, they were indiscriminate bombings, killings, and torturing of Lebanese in detention camps. It is in this context of generalized civil war and Israeli occupation that my parents were able to leave the country, to Germany first and then to Canada. You see, it is in fact pretty normal for a Lebanese like me to have not been born in Lebanon. According to many estimates, the diaspora population of Lebanon that lives outside of the country could number 15 million individuals, versus 5 million only that live in Lebanon. So that is 3 times the population of the country. As a comparison, the Korean diaspora population is estimated to be around 7 million, for 51 million at home. This reality is also one of the saddest consequences of the war and of the instability in Lebanon. Hezbollah, literally the party of God, is a mixture of a local Muslim paramilitary group and a major political party with elected member of parliaments and ministers in the government of Lebanon. So it is in this very difficult situation that the newly formed Hezbollah, backed by Iran, gained a lot of popularity in South Lebanon for its operations against Israeli forces and its goal to end the Israeli occupation. So after mounting pressure from the international community and from Hezbollah attacks, Israel decided to withdraw in 2000 from South Lebanon, except from the small area of the Sheba farm, which led Hezbollah to continue raiding and attacking Israel in order to regain it. These continued clashes on the border eventually led to another war, the war of 2006, when Israel decided to bombard and invade Lebanon again, after Hezbollah had captured Israeli soldiers, hoping for a prisoner exchange. After only a bit more than a month of fighting, the 2006 war ended with a ceasefire agreement, with quite some damage on both sides. But Israel was not able to penetrate into South Lebanon, which was understood as a major victory for Hezbollah, which did not have the military capabilities of Israel. With this event, Hezbollah gained even more popularity across the Arab world for resisting to Israel. Labeled as a resistance by some and as a terrorist group by others, Hezbollah nonetheless continued to grow in influence and in military power, maintaining a strong alliance with the Iranian and Syrian governments. To be fair, the almost 2 next decades in Lebanon were characterized by instability and a failed economic system that eventually led to the 2020 explosions of Beirut due to mismanagement. Although the war was done, Lebanon was still far from being united and functional. However, since 2006, there were no major confrontations with Israel. That is, until now. How did the current conflict actually start? Once again, the war between Israel and Lebanon is being ignited by the Palestinian conflict. After the events of October 7, 2023, and the subsequent Israeli takeover of Gaza, Hezbollah has been attacking the north of Israel with missiles to show support for Palestine in the name of Muslim Brotherhood. And now that the attack on Gaza, after almost a year, has lowered in intensity, Israel has deemed it appropriate to focus on its northern border to deal once and for all with Hezbollah. Here I need to take a break and explain the point of view of South Lebanese and Arabic people in general towards Israel. You have to understand that at this point, the hate is real, and no amount of talking will sway any party. The actual Israeli colonization project was started in the 20th century, and most Arabic people fear the extent of this colonization project. They have no guarantees that Israel will stop expanding its territory beyond its current borders. And time again, Israel has shown that they will continue to expand their settlements beyond the international agreements and take opportunities such as the Lebanese civil war to expand even further. On top of that, Lebanon has always had a lot of clean water resources, which is rare in the area. On the other hand, Israel has had a water shortage problem since its inception. Recently, Israel seems to have solved this problem with the desalination of ocean water, which constitutes more than 90% of Israel's drinking water and has even started to export some of it. However, desalination causes a number of problems. Desalination consumes a lot of energy. In Israel, this takes up to 4% of the national electricity production of the country. Desalination plants also produce a lot of waste, and not only carbon emissions, but also brine and other chemicals that Israel has to essentially dump back into their coastal waters. Another important aspect of desalinated water is that it lacks the natural minerals that are present in natural clean water, especially magnesium. This increases significantly the risks of heart diseases and diabetes. Lastly, the system is costly and drains the natural gas resources of the country, on which the electric grid is 70% dependent. Natural gas is by far the most important and widely used resource in Israel, and this leads us to two possible gains that Israel could have by invading Lebanon: access to the natural clean water resources of Lebanon, and access to the underexploited maritime natural gas fields in the south of Lebanon, which were a topic of dispute for decades between the two countries. By simply securing the zone up to the Litani River in Lebanon, Israel could see major gains in terms of energy and water resources and lessen its dependence on desalination. Lebanese people are conscious of this geopolitical reality, and it partly explains why they do not think that Israel would stop at its current borders. It also explains why a large part of Southerners are in favor of increasing military capabilities in order to defend against a possible aggression. In conclusion, I want to highlight that this video was made in order to give an insight into the point of view of a large part of the Lebanese population that is now being bombarded daily by Israeli airstrikes, with more than 2,500 deaths, 11,000 injured, and almost 1 million displaced. I try to stay objective, but I think that this perspective is largely missing from the current news. That being said, it is also important to understand the perspective from the other side as well. Israel has also genuine security concerns from the Hezbollah attacks on its territory that are being done in solidarity with Gaza, but also possibly to regain the Sheba farms, a territory that Israel has not yet returned since its retreat from Lebanon in 2000. The situation is clearly complex, and I encourage you to watch more videos from both sides of the topic if you are interested. War is always the worst scenario possible, and I really wish that deaths and destruction can stop on both sides as soon as possible. If you like this video, please like and subscribe for more personal analysis on interesting topics all around the world, including in Korea. See you next time. 들어가세요. I was about to post this video, but we just learned today that a ceasefire agreement has been accepted by Israel and Lebanon, including Hezbollah. What does the ceasefire agreement say exactly? Basically, Israel agrees to end its offensive and to leave Lebanon's territory. In return, Hezbollah has to stop firing missiles at Israel and move its forces north of the Litani River. This also includes dismantling Hezbollah's infrastructure south of the river. The situation is very similar to the end of the 2006 war, since this ceasefire is also based on the UN Security Council Resolution 1701 that ended it. That resolution says that Israeli forces must return south of the Blue Line, which is the de facto border between Lebanon and Israel. Meanwhile, the Lebanese military and the UN peacekeeping forces have to monitor the area south of the Litani River and make sure that Hezbollah remains inactive in this buffer zone. Now here's my quick analysis of what's happening. The blue part of this image shows how far Israel's ground offensive has gone into Lebanon. If Israel's military couldn't fully dismantle Hezbollah's infrastructure in the south up to the Litani River, then the Lebanese army or the UN are even less likely to succeed. UN forces have been in southern Lebanon since 2000, but their actions are very limited, mostly focused on helping civilians and assisting authorities. Similarly, the Lebanese army acts more like a police force in Lebanon and is severely underfunded. On top of that, Hezbollah has strong local support in the south, which makes tracking its operations much harder. All of this to say that Hezbollah is very likely to stay active in the south despite this agreement. So it is safe to say that from Hezbollah's perspective, it sees Israel's retreat as a victory, as it did back in 2006. Israel, on the other hand, says that it still has the right to take military action in Lebanon if needed. Prime Minister Netanyahu has made it clear that if Hezbollah tries to rearm or rebuild infrastructure or dig tunnels in the south, it will strike again. He also mentioned that Israel will use this ceasefire to focus on the threat from Iran and to rebuild its military resources. For Israel, this war also gave them the advantage of separating the two fronts of Hezbollah and Hamas, which they see as a significant achievement. This situation reminds me of the two Koreas, where both sides had agreed to a ceasefire, but continued arming and preparing for the next clash. The ceasefire on the Korean peninsula lasted for 70 years. Let's see how long this one can last. In some way, this war gave a reality check to both sides. Israel now understands that it cannot easily advance into Lebanon, and Lebanon is once again reminded of the destruction of Israeli airstrikes. Don't get me wrong though, I'm really happy that a ceasefire agreement has been reached. It means civilian casualties will stop, which is the most important thing. However, this might just be one chapter in the bigger conflict in the Middle East, one where Iran and its partners continue to fight against Israel and its allies.